2 Corinthians 4:4 says, "In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ." That means that all around us there is an invisible force, a presence of an enemy, be it Satan, be it demons, that has the ability to manipulate my environment to cause me to believe the wrong things or to live the wrong way, to deceive me. It's why Peter says in 1 Peter 5:8, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour." So how do I prevent that kind of deception from entering into my life? That's what we're going to discuss in this episode of Lifting the Darkness. Hi, my name is Danny Levesque, and this is Lifting the Darkness. And if you enjoy the content of this video, then please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button so that you'll be notified when the next video is available. Also, please share this with other people. If you feel there's someone you know that would enjoy the content of this video, please share it with them. The more interaction you give us, if you have questions, leave them in the comments. Give me a like if you would. So if you do all of that, give me a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. It makes this video become more visible to other people. But the most effective way to get someone else to join us is to copy the link, click share, copy the link, and text it to somebody that you believe would watch this video. And that would be the most effective way to get people involved. If you'd like to be emailed when new videos are uploaded, or to be notified when there are new things happening in the ministry, my email address is in the description below. Just email me. I'd be glad to incorporate or include you in that. Also, the references will be in the description below. So again, 2 Corinthians 4:4 says, "In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ." And then Peter adds, "Be sober, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour." So where do we begin this effort to prevent this deception in our lives? The first step to do that is to know that he is active, to be aware that he's around us, and to be on the lookout for that. But part of the problem is we don't know where to look for that. And we begin that journey with 2 Corinthians 11, verse 3 and 4, where Paul says, "But I am afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve by his cunning, your thoughts will be led astray from a sincere and pure devotion to Christ. For if someone comes and proclaims another Jesus than the one we proclaimed, or if you receive a different spirit from the one you received, or if you accept a different gospel from the one you accepted." Now, he here mentions it's the thoughts that are concerning. It's your way of thinking. And I think the reason why some of us fall prey to deception is we're waiting for like Satan to show up, like a visible manifestation of Satan or a demon. We're waiting for like a ghost to appear, and that's when the deception begins. And we're missing it altogether. The deception where he begins to work is in your thoughts. So if you're thinking right now, then that is a playground where there is the potential that the enemy is right now attempting to deceive you. And so we need to be monitoring our thinking, but what do we need to be watching for in our thinking? The attention was drawn to a pure devotion to Jesus Christ. So I need to know, what does it look like to be devoted to Jesus Christ? And then look at my thinking. Is my thinking causing me not to have a pure devotion to Christ, or running counter to that? And if that is the case, then I've likely discovered a way that the enemy is getting into my thinking and trying to disrupt what God is doing in my life. So be evaluating your thoughts and be asking yourself if that is the place for that. The next step is in 2 Corinthians 11, verse 13 through 15, which says, "For such men," these are human beings, "are false apostles, deceitful workmen, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it is of no surprise if the servants also disguise themselves as servants of Christ." So here we have the reality that Satan works in our lives in indirect ways. So we know he tries to disrupt our thinking, but he also comes to us in the form of other people. Whether they are aware of it or not, Satan has been working in the thinking of the people around us, and then they begin to say things into our lives and do things to us that is Satan attempting to try to deceive us from truth. So again, instead of waiting for some ghost, some visible manifestation of Satan or a demon to show up, or some audible voice to show up, we should be looking at the way we're thinking, and we should be looking at and listening to what other human beings are saying to us, because Satan might be in that. And if I'm aware of that, then I'm going to be evaluating those things, and I'm then on my guard. Then Galatians 1, verse 7 through 9, Paul says, there are some who trouble you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. Again, we got the human element. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, and now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. So we have people showing up. We have Satan showing up, and we saw in that previous verse him showing up as an angel of light. And we see here that sometimes Satan will show up in a manifestation, but he's not going to have big horns and a red body. He's going to show up as if he's an angel, as if he's on God's side. In fact, Satan's going to show up as if he's God's voice. So if you believe you are hearing God talking to you, it is right in that moment that you should be heavy on evaluation, because that's the way Satan tries to enter your life. Don't mishear me. I'm not saying that God can't speak to you, or when God does, you shouldn't listen to what he says. I'm saying if you think, remember, this is the devil's playground, our thought process. If you think you are hearing God, you need to examine that voice to make sure that it actually is God, because Satan's going to try to mimic God's voice. He's going to try to sound like God. We need to make sure that's not Satan, but it's God's voice. Now, how do I do that? Well, again, Paul said a gospel contrary to the one you have received. So I want to be very familiar with New Testament principles, so that when a voice comes, I'm going to evaluate, is this consistent with New Testament principles? If it is, this is probably God's voice. If it isn't, this isn't God's voice. And so I can't just say, well, I felt someone speak to me, or a thought came into my head, so it must be God. This is where the danger is. Now, how else do we fight against this deception? We've mentioned this before in previous videos, and I'll leave a playlist at the end of the video here that you can go back and watch the other videos. But I think it's relevant for this to be here again. And that is in Ephesians 6, verse 11, Paul says, put on the whole armor of God. Why? That you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. So the way that we can prevent the devil from deceiving me is by exercising the armor of God. What are the elements of the armor of God? First, in verse 14 is truth. Now, he mentions truth in one place, and then in verse 17 mentions the Word of God. So this truth is different from the Word of God. It's extra-biblical truth. That is, it's just truth, plain and simple. And so we need to be asking ourselves, is this true? This idea, this thought, this action, this reality, is this true? And if I'm focused on knowing what is true, that's going to be one of the ways that, if that's my posture, it's going to be difficult for deception to enter in. Second is righteousness, also in verse 14. If I am seeking to make sure that I'm living according to the righteous standards of the Word of God, and I'm not approving of sin in other people's lives, if that's the posture I'm maintaining, then it's going to be difficult for deception to enter in. That's why these are our weapons, our armory. Then in verse 15, the gospel, like the previous verse I had mentioned, if we are making sure that our thoughts are in alignment with the New Testament principles and our actions are in alignment with New Testament principles, it's going to be difficult for deception to enter into our lives. Then verse 16, he mentions faith. Faith is a broad term. Faith could be trusting in the Lord. Faith could also be hopeful and optimistic, and so there's different forms of it. I believe in this case he's speaking of the optimistic form of faith, and the reason why I think that is because the next tool in our armory is salvation. So it seems to be something different from salvation. So it's likely the optimistic faith. Now, why would that matter in the schemes or the attacks of the enemy? Because the enemy tries to discourage us from doing the things that we need to be doing, like consistently studying the Bible, like consistently praying, like consistently being involved in God's kingdom, being involved in church and attending church and being involved in ministry and sharing our faith and making disciples and all those kingdom-oriented things. Satan tries to get us discouraged from doing those things, whether it's I'm not able to do that, I'm not gifted enough, or I just don't want to, or whatever it is he's sowing in there. So if I decide that, no, I'm going to remain optimistic and I'm going to keep persevering in the things that God has called me to do, living righteously, studying his word, praying, being involved in church, doing ministry, sharing my faith with others, both in the form of evangelism and discipleship, I'm going to keep pressing forward with the kingdom. If I keep that posture, then when discouragement sets in, I can know that it's likely the enemy. But if I maintain this posture, if no, I'm going to stay optimistic about this, I'm going to keep doing this, it's going to be hard for Satan to deceive someone in that position. Then there's salvation. Now, what does this mean? Just make sure you're saved and you're good? No, I need to understand what being saved looks like and make sure that that's what I am. Because he's going to try to get us to not be that. So as long as I'm making sure, am I in this framework? Am I in this picture that I am in a right relationship with Jesus? And if I'm in that posture, it's going to be hard for the enemy to come in and bring about deception. Then, of course, in verse 17 is the Word of God. So it's the whole Bible. I need to make sure that I'm adhering to all biblical principles. And if I'm doing that, it's going to be hard for the enemy to bring deception into my life. And then lastly, verse 18, he mentions to be praying. This is vital to giving us the energy, the strength that we need to resist those temptations. So if we're utilizing all 7 of these pieces of the armor, and we're maintaining this posture of I'm going to make sure I know what the truth is. I'm going to be righteous and not approve of sin. I'm going to live according to New Testament principles and biblical principles as a whole. I'm going to be optimistic and keep pursuing the things of the kingdom. I'm going to make sure I know what salvation is and that I'm in that picture, and I'm going to be praying. If you are in those positions and you're examining things in your life, it's going to be hard for Satan to bring deception into your life. I hope that is helpful to you. If you have any questions on that, just leave them in the comments below. I'd be glad to answer your questions. Or if you'd rather give me a question privately, again, my email address is in the description below. Feel free to send me an email. And once again, please give me a like if you enjoyed the content of this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with somebody else, and leave a comment. Doing all of those things will make the videos become more visible to other people as we spread the pursuit of lifting the darkness in our lives. Thank you for being a part of this. May God bless you.